What's up, y'all? It's Zach with Living Corporate, and you know what we do. I say a little thing, I go on with a joke, and then I say something about how we amplify the voices of Black and brown voices at work. Shout out to all of our listeners, our first and last time listeners, you know what I'm saying, the millennials, the Gen Xers, after the Gen Xers, the baby boomers, and then also some of y'all Gen Y, Gen Zs rather, Gen Y is another word for millennials, you know what I'm talking about. If you're new here, you know what we do. We do this through, we amplify voices through authentic, accessible discussions with Black and brown leaders. Today is no different, as we have Glenn Newman with VMware. Hold up now, Glenn Newman with VMware. I got to go ahead and get just one quick air horn for that. We out here. Glenn is a D&I and talent professional with over 7 years of diversity and inclusion, campus recruitment, and talent management experience. In his current role in VMware, Glenn is working to make VMware's Power of Difference communities, or they call those pods, y'all, to take them to the next level by helping them achieve business and D&I program objectives. He is also focused on building inclusive manager and leadership capabilities as the company works to increase representation of underrepresented minorities and women by fostering a more inclusive culture, okay, where employees feel like they belong and they can bring their authentic selves to work every day. Okay, now listen, y'all, that was a whole bunch of like corporate talk to say Glenn is out here trying to make it better for Black and brown folks at VMware to do what they do. Okay, that's all that was saying. But you know, they gotta, in this D&I space, we have to kind of pretty things up with these like really flowery and colorful languages. But that's what he's doing. Okay, now look, previously Glenn managed the overall recruitment of associates and consultants for BCG. Okay, what's up, BCG? We see y'all. Hold up. But this ain't a BCG podcast. I'm just saying. He also had a talent and D&I roles at Travelport, Accenture, Visa, Google as a contractor. See, I like, you know what? Glenn is an honest dude, man. So he sent me over this copy, right? And in the copy, it says contract in parentheses. Glenn, you ain't got to be that honest. Representation. You ain't got to be that honest. And he began his career as a communication and change management analyst at Towers Watson. Man, with all of that being said, Glenn, man, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Thank you. I'm good. How about yourself?
Man, I'm doing really well. I'm excited to have you here. You know, we had to take some time, you know, but you back in town. We having a conversation. I'm excited about it. So let's, you know, we did a little brief intro about you where I kind of gave you, you know, your LinkedIn picture, but like, what else would you like to tell us about yourself?
I mean, I guess honestly, you captured most of it in terms of like the bio and kind of what I'm working on
right.
At VMware. I mean, outside of that, I'm an Aries, so I'm a hothead.
I got you.
I like to ask the difficult questions, right. And I feel like anybody who has worked with me before will definitely tell you that I have a tendency to ask difficult questions, but also ask the questions that other people feel like they probably shouldn't ask or they don't want to ask. And I feel like I help keep people accountable, you know, like I think it's important to be that voice and to have that voice and to push the envelope a little bit. So hopefully I can disrupt for the betterment of others.
Come on now, disrupt. I love that, man. And no, so you say you're Aries. So I'm a Virgo. Actually, you know, Beyonce and I have the same birthday.
I did not know that. I didn't know she was a Virgo, though.
I'm saying. So, you know, I'm out here as well. I'm trying to disrupt things as well. So, okay. So you're a global diversity and inclusion program manager. What does that mean practically? And what prompted you to take this role at VMware?
Yeah. So, I mean, like, quite frankly, I was looking for a role where I can have an impact. And I really, so a lot of my career has been in campus recruiting and diversity campus recruiting, right? And I really wanted to pivot from more of the acquisition side and the talent attraction into the, you know, the development, the retention, promotion, engagement, et cetera, right? Of underrepresented groups. And so I was looking for opportunities and I was interviewing for a few, but quite frankly, I wanted to stay in Atlanta. And one of the good things about the VMware role is it allowed me to stay in Atlanta. And I say that I'm always grateful because I get to work in tech. I get to work at a pretty large, pretty well-known tech company, but I get to do it in Atlanta. And I don't think a lot of people can say that same thing. I think the other part of it was I was really looking to have a seat at the table. And I can honestly say that, you know, my manager, who's a director and my VP, like they want to know what I think. I mean, but they want to know what everybody else on the team thinks. And so like that's important to me because I've been in places before where my voice didn't matter or was overshadowed by people who are more senior or people in the business. I mean, you know, you've worked in professional services, so you definitely probably know what that's like.
I do.
You work in professional services, so you know what that's like. And so I think, you know, just throughout my interview process, it felt like the right fit for me for a number of reasons. And So yeah, that's what prompted me to join. And I think, since joining, I feel like, my expectations have been managed well, but I think I have been set up for success, and I'm actually doing the work that we talked about doing in the interview, which is good.
That is good, man. Because, sometimes it's like you get a job and you think, especially in these D&I roles, right? And I've had these conversations like with other folks on the podcast, right? We've talked to Jennifer Brown, and we've talked to Amy Waninger. We talked to other people, right? Talked to even DeRay McKesson. And we talk about like how like these D&I spaces they're slowly becoming decolonized, but like there's still a lot of like work to do to like really get stronger representation in these spaces, right? You end up thinking, you're over here like, oh snap, I got this job and they about to really put me a seat at the table, give me a voice. And you turn around, you talking about like not jokes on you. You know what I'm saying? You have no seat.
It's so though, and I think like just given my personality, and I mean I attribute this to professional service. Like I grew up in professional services, right? Like from Towers Watson, from working at Accenture for over 2 years, from the BCG. I mean, those organizations move quickly, right? And they're all about like high caliber work, high quality work, quick turnarounds. And so I think coming to VMware, and I think in industry in general, industry is a bit slower, right? And so I think I have to manage my expectations around what I can get done, what we can get done, what the business is ready for. And so I think I'm definitely learning those lessons, and I'm still working to manage my own expectations.
That's real. No, that's real. It's crazy. It's crazy, man, because sometimes, like I said, it's just it takes time. I think there's a lot of I've had this conversation multiple times too. Is like I think it's easy if you don't have like black and brown people like in these roles, it's easy to forget like the emotional labor that it takes to do this type of work, right? Like it's not just like right, it's human. Like you're dealing with human beings, and you're dealing with human beings that look like you, have similar stories to you. That you're really trying to impact. So I definitely get that. And managing expectations is always important. Let's talk about let's talk about this. D&I continues to be like an area where organizations are focused on, especially in tech. So what do you believe has been the motivation for VMware to continue to expand their D&I office? Because like I feel as if, I don't know, like, we've had some research. We have white papers, on our website. Like, oh, by the way, hey y'all, check us out, y'all. We got white papers. Like, don't play with us. Straight up. Okay, we got white papers. And then in our research, everybody knows like a common statistic is that $8 billion a year is being spent, and I would argue wasted in D&I today, and that we're not really seeing tangible results. So like, and especially as you think about like the economy as it stands today, like why do you think in this point in time VMware is still expanding this space?
Well, I feel like a lot of the times we hear about like it's the right thing to do and we do it for the business, right? So I hear that a lot, and not specifically at VMware, but just in general.
Right.
And I feel that to say I think those are the reasons we're doing it, right? Like we're doing it because we genuinely believe, right, across the company, especially from a leadership perspective, that it's important. And that specifically, like we call our pods that I mentioned earlier, the power of difference communities. Like we believe the power of human difference allows us to develop better products, to build better products, to better serve customers, to be better partners, right? And then to innovate. So I think there's definitely a business reason behind it. But then I also genuinely feel like there are leaders who think it's the right thing to do. And I think it's interesting because there's the winning the hearts and minds of change, right? So I think you have to get people with the pathos for the people who, you relate, they relate to that, but then you have to have, the practicality and the business perspective for others as well. The data had showed that people, like once they connect emotionally to diversity and inclusion, they're better able to kind of buy in to it as opposed to just connecting to the business. So I think we definitely have some more of that work to do to continue to pull at people's heartstrings, but then also make it real for them so that they genuinely buy in, and not just because it's the right thing to do from a business perspective, but it's the right thing to do from a human perspective.
That's a really good point. And I do think it's both and, right? I think organizations often fail when they try to do one or the other, because like the reality is some folks just not going to care, right? But then you got other folks who are like, okay, I'm going to care as much as it benefits my bottom line. So if you can point to me like how this can benefit my bottom line, then I'm all for it, right? I think the challenge The challenge that I think something that has yet to be quantified is like the amount of time organizations waste in really calculating turnover. So like we know the turnover data is bad, like in tech, like, but like those numbers have yet to really be fully published. Like I don't think any one organization has really really gone into like the comparative analytics on their turnover data. But like I think if really one was to look at those numbers alone, they'd be like, hey yo, we got to do a better job, because like this is crazy. I mean, it's just over here like, but like opposite, like in reverse, like, you know what I'm saying? It would be like that sound, but you know,
like a wah wah wah.
Right. You know what I mean? And then over time, you know, organizations are so like monolithic. They're so white and they're so straight. They're so male. You know, I'm looking on my job board. I'm looking at the job board. I might see a job. Let's just say like I'm a person of color. I'm on the job board because I know that this place isn't inclusive. I'm looking at that job like,
I hate to say it. I hope I don't sound ridiculous. I don't know who this man is. I mean, he could be walking down the street. I wouldn't know a thing. Sorry to this man.
You know, I'm sorry to this man. I don't even recognize. Man, listen, Glenn, I've been so excited to use this soundboard, man. I got some new sounds.
I love that. Oh my gosh! If you knew how many times I say that, like, you know, I'm sorry. I don't want to sound foolish.
I don't want to sound ridiculous. I do not know who this is. And so let me pivot, right? So you talked about the power of difference in these communities. I really want to, now look, I'm not trying to have you spill any secret sauce out, you know, but I want to learn more about the strategy of these power of difference. And really, frankly, I want to like talk more about this offline too. Like, what's the strategy with these pods? Like what are y'all trying to achieve? What is this looking like? Like, how did this come about? And what, practically speaking, like, how does it fit into y'all's D&I strategy?
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, D&I strategy overall, there are three kind of key pieces. There's the representation piece, where we talk a lot about increasing representation and focusing specifically on underrepresented minorities and women. And what I often tell people is just because we're saying we're focusing on doesn't mean that we aren't also working to increase representation of other underrepresented groups. And I say that because I really think it's important for people to know that we're doing both. So it's a yes and again, these things are not mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
The other part of it is building a culture of inclusion, right? So focusing on culture and what that really means. And then the third piece is thought leadership. How are we tapping into podcasts like this to let people know that, okay, VMware is an inclusive place to work, and we're working to make it an even more inclusive place to work, right? And then how are we sharing what we're doing and the impact of the diversity and the inclusion that it's having on the business? So I say all that to say our pods, the power of different communities, are really our ERGs, right?
Okay,
so employee or business resource groups. And I think we are at a place where we are really trying to take those ERGs, known as pods, to be more BRGs. How are the programs and the initiatives and the sponsorships and things like that contributing to the business, whether that be in terms of professional development of underrepresented groups so that they develop and have talent moves and move into different roles and are contributing more to the business,
right?
Or whether that means we are attending various recruiting conferences and thinking about building pipelines in STEM and in tech of underrepresented groups. Whether that be, you know, high school, college, what have you, you know, experienced professionals, or is that we're partnering with other nonprofits in the space to, like, you know, to talk about what we're doing and help other companies and partner with other companies. And then, or, you know, like a lot of companies, especially companies who are B2C, right? So when you think about like big consumer goods or just any company that sells products directly to consumers, they think a lot about and have a lot of conversations about how do our products reflect our consumers, right? So if you think about some of the large consumer goods or CPGs or those companies, they're really thinking about those things. And so I think for us, it's how are we making sure that we're getting the opinions of our employees who are underrepresented or in underrepresented groups, and how are we leveraging that thought leadership, that knowledge, that know-how to further develop relationships with our customers to build better products, to innovate, right? And so I think ideally we want to get our pods to a place where we're doing more of those things.
That's a really exciting vision, right? Like, so you're thinking of, so basically these pods, I mean, they're genuinely, if effectively strategized around and activated effectively, are real difference makers. And you have them basically stratified across the business. That's pretty exciting, man.
Right. Yeah, and I think it's a bit easier for people in general to make that connection when you're walking into like a grocery store and you're picking up a product on a shelf and thinking, how are people who look like me or like me thinking about buying this product or consuming this product?
Yeah.
And so for us, it's different because, again, we're B2B and we have to think about it differently. I do think it's ambitious, but I think it can be done, especially when you think about relationships, building relationships, and then again, innovating.
100%. Okay. So what are you most excited about when it comes to your role in VMware in 2020?
Oh, that's a good question. I think what I'm really most interested in is, so quite frankly, we have, and this is public knowledge, so we have closed the acquisition of Carbon Black, and we are working to close the acquisition of Pivotal. So as a result of that, our diversity and inclusion team is going to be growing. And so I think what I'm looking forward to is the growth of our team, which means, one, we can do more. And I think also I'm looking forward to the opportunity to partner more with the business and be more of a diversity business partner. And so I think you can think about it from like there's the D&I engagement piece, which around the pods, and then there's like the education piece around unconscious bias and how are we educating our managers, our leaders, our employees around inclusion and topics like privilege and microaggressions and things like that, right? And then there's sitting in the business and working with business leaders and managers to develop plans to actually move the needle, right, in a different way than on the, the education, the engagement, that side. So I think that's what I'm looking for. I have an opportunity to really partner more closely with the business in 2020 as a result of our team growing.
My goodness gracious, I got to give you a flex burn for all that, though. That sounds incredible. That sounds awesome. Shout out to your acquisition as well.
Right.
Okay. So you're talking about what you've been doing at VMware. You're talking about some of the strategic visioning around the pods. Again, it does sound really ambitious, but like I don't think when I say ambitious, sometimes people say ambitious and they really just hating, right? It's kind of like, it sounds a bit ambitious, but like I mean, it's ambitious. Like, wow, this is very positive. Like, this is incredible. I'm really excited for what y'all are trying to drive. This is my question though. What advice would you have for organizations really at the beginning of their D&I journeys, right? Like maybe they don't even have ERGs or BRGs. And then what have been the lessons learned for you? It's kind of like the B part to that question.
Yeah. So I think like advice, I think for companies who are just starting, I don't know. I think it's like, I don't know. I always go back to like the change management, right? Part of it, right? So like thinking about how are you really pulling in leaders? How are you having it? How are you having your efforts so that they are leader led and it really sits in the business and leaders are held accountable for? So I think that accountability is super important and not just leaders, right? So it's like, if like VPs and above are the only people who are held accountable, then what happens to other people who are directors, senior directors, et cetera, who lead teams are not held accountable. So I think accountability is big. And I think for companies who are just starting out in general, like just starting out the company by having an inclusive culture and kind of ingraining that into people and educating people from the time that they join the company, but even before they join the company, like through the onboarding and through the talent acquisition piece, right? So I think that's the advice I would have. And then really just kind of walk the talk, right? Because I'm one of those people, I really, really value honesty. And I think I'm really good at sensing BS, right? A lot of us are. And I think we know when someone, and being honest with us, and when they're just kind of like giving us well, this is what we're working on. And it's like, that's not really what you're working on. Just be honest with me, right? If you have room to grow, say, these are the two things we're doing. However, we need to be doing these 5 and we're working on it, right? Like, I'd rather somebody tell me that than to say, oh, well, we have these amazing initiatives. And it's like, do you really have those initiatives? Or are you just talking about it? And is it just lip service? So that's my advice. And then I think in terms of like lessons learned for me personally, we talk a lot about like people of color and underrepresented minorities and Black and brown people, right, in corporate America. But like, yes, I'm a Black man at VMware, but I'm not just a Black man. Like, I'm a gay Black man at VMware who is a part of a global team that is not just thinking about bringing in and developing and retaining and promoting more Black and brown people, but we're thinking about underrepresented groups more broadly and thinking about making VMware a place where everyone can come and thrive. And I like to say, be safe, seen, and connected, or feel safe, seen, and connected, right? So I say that to say that a lot of the things that I've learned personally I advocate for people who don't look like me or who I don't identify with from a, race, ethnic background, or other parts of my identity, right? And it's just really interesting because I think by being vulnerable and by being empathetic, I am really able to do that. But it's just interesting how, I can be on a call with people who have a completely different identity as me, but I'm advocating for them. And so I'll give you a real example.
Please.
A lot of people don't know about the model minority myth, right? And so I've read this book by Ijoma Oluo called So You Want to Talk About Race. Love the book. It's amazing. I would completely, totally recommend it. What the model minority myth is, and, I'm not speaking verbatim here, but it's really around the fact that people think about those who are Asian American or Asian as the model minority. And they have all these stereotypes about Asians to include they're super smart. They really, they want to be in STEM. They're really good at math, those kinds of things. Right. A lot of people might think they have a lot of money, but that's not the case. When you look at the data, especially of some Asian American or Asian cultures, that's just not the case. The degrees or the degree attainment from some of the Asian cultures, those numbers are significantly less than Hispanic, Latinx, or African American Black cultures and Black identities, right? So I think that's one of those things by me just kind of educating myself, reading that book. And then I was on a call and I literally had to stop someone and say, well, actually the model minority, this is what it is. This is why it exists. And this is why we need an Asian at VMware Power of Difference community. It's important because there are also people in this community who aren't rich, who aren't science, math, STEM, etc. majors, and who didn't come from a home where both of their parents were doctors, lawyers, computer scientists, etc.
Man, I love that. And you're 100% right. So I'm going to start at the top of what you said. So you were talking about the fact that you're not just one thing, right? You're not just one identity. And I think a lot of times, we really do fail to be intersectional in our D&I work. We just had Lionel Lee, who's a diversity leader over at the Zillow Group. And we were talking about the fact that when you look at a lot of work today in these D&I spaces, they're mostly focused on gender. So even the fact that we're talking about race and gender, to me, is a win, because a lot of times we'll dismiss race and then say things like diversity of thought or just other just generalized things. But I think you're absolutely right, especially when it comes to LGBTQ space, because
exactly
because this is what I've learned. So I'm a cishet Black dude, right? And as I've been having conversations, this was earlier, last season, we were talking to Janet Pope, who's the diversity and inclusion leader over at Capgemini. And we were talking about how it's important to make sure that you're being intersectional with the LGBTQ spaces, because if you're not, those spaces can end up being largely white, and you end up missing out on a lot of different Black and brown experiences within that space.
You're so right. I mean, think about, again, going back to a gay Black man who works in tech, there are not a lot of us, right? Especially when you think about the LGBTQ community in general. So I was at the Pride Parade in Atlanta for the first time. And I mean, it was just interesting for me to think about being the only in a place where there are a lot of people like me, right? So whether they were LGBTQ or allies or what have you, I was still the only Black man there, right? And so, and when I say there, I mean specifically with the company who came out to the parade. I'm sure there are others there. There may or may not be. So I don't want to falsely assume, but it was just interesting, again, looking around and being okay, Glenn, you're still the only in this group of people who are like you because of intersectionality, right? And I think lately there has been a lot of conversation around intersectionality in terms of looking at women of color, specifically Black women, and looking at Asian women, for example. And then also, again, from an LGBTQ perspective, there's been a ton of conversation lately around the importance of intersectionality. And there, I was telling the team, because last week, one of the reasons we had to postpone this is because I was at Out and Equal, which is an LGBTQ workplace summit. It's it was amazing. I loved it. And I think there was this undercurrent of people getting on stage and really being advocates and allies and talking about how trans women of color are being murdered and no one is doing anything about it. And I don't think enough people are having those conversations. So it will be interesting to see the shift and how people are having more conversations, but then also taking action over the next few years.
Man, this has just been a super dope conversation, man. I really appreciate the fact that you took the time to join us. Before we let you go, any shout outs, parting words?
Shout outs and parting words. I don't know. Like, I would honestly, like in all seriousness, I would encourage people to read that book. So You Want to Talk About Race by Ijoma Olowo. Like, I think everybody should read it, no matter how you identify, because like, again, going back to like a lesson learned, like I mean, of course I knew I had privilege. Like, I'm able-bodied,
Right.
I'm educated. I went to a really good school. Like, I've had the opportunity to go to really great schools, like, you know, even in middle and high school. And so I reached out to one of my friends and I was like, girl, we got privilege. And, you know, we were having a conversation about it. Right. And so I like, even though you might be an underrepresented minority or a member of an underrepresented group, I think just realizing those things and being self-aware are helpful. So I would encourage people to read that book and just start to have conversations with people who are not like you to increase your understanding.
Y'all, my goodness, y'all. You know what, man? Let me see here. Let's see here. What are we going to do, man? I gotta thank you, man. I gotta let you know, bro. Cause I'm gonna tell you the truth, man. Sometimes, you know, I have some of these conversations with some of these D&I leaders, and they really, and not on Living Corporate though. Like, just I make moves, so I talk to people, right? Let me tell you, they be talking to me in the back of my mind. I'm over here like, it's a fraud, it's a fraud, it's a fraud, it's a fraud.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you being authentic, taking the time to like really share a bit, right? Not just about VMware, but about yourself. So,
Right.
man, so yeah, man. So blessings to you. And that does it for us, y'all, on Living Corporate. You know what we do, man. We post this stuff like 3 times a week. We got these regular interviews, then we got Tristan's tips, and then we got the link up with Letitia, all really to amplify Black and brown voices at work. Make sure you check us out on Twitter at livingcorporate_pod, on Instagram at Living Corporate, and then, you know, just Google us. You know what I'm saying? We out here, right? Like, we, you know, Glenn, like, we making moves, man. We got livingcorporate.co, livingcorporate.tv, livingcorporate.org, livingcorporate.net, you know, Living Corporate, what else? We got pretty much all the Living Corporates except livingcorporate.com. Now, livingcorporate.com is owned by like Australia, right? So I don't know what's going on with that one. But we also have living-corporate. Please say that .com. So just check us out. We out here. Let's see here. What else? Housekeeping. Shout out to Ellen, who was on mute this entire time, but Ellen was here to make sure that I didn't get Glenn or VMware sued. So shout out to you, Ellen. And yeah. This has been Zach. You've been listening to Glenn Newman, mover, shaker, D&I leader at VMware. Till next time, y'all. Peace.
Living Corporate is a podcast by Living Corporate LLC. Our logo was designed by David Dawkins. Our theme music was produced by Ken Brown. Additional music production by Antoine Franklin for Musical Elevation. Post-production is handled by Jeremy Jackson. Got a topic suggestion? Email us at livingcorporatepodcast@gmail.com. You can find us online on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and living-corporate.com. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned.